Hey, welcome to the Product Manual, the world's #1 product management interview preparation program that is created by dozens of real product managers at leading companies, including Google, Microsoft, Meta, Netflix, and more. If you want to enroll and get immediate access, visit theproductmanual.com. In this video, we're going to be viewing and discussing a mock interview with an experienced product manager. Let's get right to it.
Hey everyone, we have Sam here today. He's an experienced PM. Before we dive in, I'm just going to ask him to give an intro about himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam. Thanks Alex for having me on this session. So I'm currently a PM at Microsoft, local to Seattle. Study computer science and out of college started at Microsoft, and I've been there since for almost 5 years, which is wild. The time goes by fast when you're having fun and building to scale for billions of people, I guess. Uh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for the intro. So today we're going to be looking at a product design interview question. Let's say you're no longer a PM at Microsoft today. Say you're a new PM at Facebook. And the question we're trying to answer is, how would you go about designing a product to buy and sell antiques?
Sure, yeah. So kind of shifting my lens to being a PM at Meta. If I'm understanding the question, to design a product to buy and sell antiques. So I think the first thing, if I understood that question correctly, I think the first thing I try to consider is uh, at Meta, which is obviously a different company than what I'm familiar with, but understanding their mission and values. So you want to relate that to the product, and that'll kind of give you your guiding lens into how you start to design, actually the solutions for this product. So at Facebook, not to quote, but I would assume their mission is related to connecting, the billions of people around the world, let's say to be successful in what they want to accomplish and meet others and grow and expose their selves and their posts and also in this case their listings for their marketplace. So yeah, so with that, I would probably want to consider for this ask of marketplace is just starting to understand, who is the customer segment. So, who are the people that actually be using this product to get a sense of their unique kind of needs and also potential pain points. So, in this case, I would probably ask some clarifying questions to you, Alex, of trying to understand. So, are we trying to focus in kind of the traditional marketplace sense where it's mostly kind of individuals like ourselves that are buying and selling things, or is this more so focused towards like business to business or business to consumer transactions? um,
Got it. I think I'll just let you drive that part.
Sweet, yeah. So I think what would probably make the most sense, just with the assumptions of how marketplace operates today, is that it's mostly focused on like individuals, so like consumer to consumer, and kind of that like consumer economy. So I would focus on likely starting to assess like what are some personas, so like potential users of this system or product. So uh, going off some assumptions, and I'll try to kind of clarify those with you, Alex, if they make sense. I kind of think of two main personas. One being this seller, so like an actual seller of antiques, someone who's maybe, let's try to get specific, and feel free to let me know if I'm getting too specific, but like let's imagine these are new grads or like college student aged younger folks who happen to have some things lying around, maybe from their parents' house. Maybe they're trying to sell some of their parents' antiques that have just been sitting there collecting dust, and they realize, like this handmade thing might actually have some value, and it could help pay for some of my school or my new apartment I just moved to in New York. Um, so I'd say we have the seller persona. So like this individual who's kind of in their mid 20s, who is looking to sell some antique potential furniture or items on the service. And then on the flip side, so that's kind of the seller. On the flip side, there are these buyers, and maybe the buyers aren't that same demographic. Maybe it's a mix. Maybe there's some folks that are kind of more eclectic. Maybe they are similar in age, but I would assume, and I guess Alex, keep me honest here, someone who's looking for antiques, I would say, are generally of the older category, maybe like people of that seller's parents' age. who are kind of interested and remember these things when they came out and kind of have that intrinsic value for these items more so than maybe, the younger person selling it does. So they're trying to kind of capture that value of like, oh wow, yeah, I remember this, and yeah, I would pay a premium for that. So is that a safe assumption? Like the age kind of differences, like the seller's maybe kind of tech savvy person who's trying to help their parents sell some antiques, and the buyer's more so like an older person who's interested in buying some kind of eclectic furniture for their house.
Yeah, I think that split makes a lot of sense. And I think those demographics make perfect sense to me.
So with that, I would say like I would want to start. So before just like jumping into a solution, obviously you want to understand, like for any product, what are the customer needs? In this case, the customer is both those personas. If we kind of keep it simplified, of course, there could be some other personas. I mean, one that comes to mind, just not get ahead, is like, of course, Facebook itself, right, needs to be a part of this equation. They need a way to also kind of be embedded into the solution and drive their results, but also provide an excellent experience for these two personas. But for the sake of the actual users, I'd say the seller and buyer are mainly the biggest focus. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that seems very reasonable.
Awesome. So with that, I'd start to kind of break down by persona, like what are some pain points or customer needs that they have. So kind of starting, I guess, I'm jotting on notes here on the side, but like on the left-hand side with the seller, I would start to understand, um, you know, what are they looking for in this solution? So like core needs, of course, with any marketplace, you kind of need your marketplace fundamentals. So a way for profile creation, which again, the assumption is that they already have a Facebook account. So hopefully this isn't a tool that they need to download separately. Hopefully it's a part, and this is assumption, but it's a part of the Facebook ecosystem so they can leverage the scale that already exists and the customer base that already exists. So that's kind of a big assumption. But they'd need that, right? A way to kind of have a selling profile. So maybe that builds on top of their existing Facebook profile. With that, they're also going to need a way to, of course, list. So like list these listings for sale on the antique marketplace. So kind of like a listing service, right? A way to list items. But then with that, right, it comes kind of two things that come to mind is like a way to research other listings. So like understand like what's the going rate for these things, and maybe that's a part of the listing process so that they don't have to list something out of their gut feel and then be like, oh crap, I listed that for too much or too little. But maybe there's some sort of benchmarking of, you know, and this is kind of jumping to solutions, but I think just the need is a way to make sure that they are listing their item for the appropriate cost. Um, so this kind of listing search and research, I think, would be kind of a need that they would have.
Gotcha. So just to understand what the market rate is.
Exactly, exactly. It's like understanding the market rate for the product they're trying to sell. And then lastly, so kind of I think of like closing out the transaction. So they need a way to actually receive funds. So whether that's through the Facebook platform itself, and maybe there's a unique tie-in Facebook could do there to make it seamless and also benefit Facebook. Um, and then also to kind of showcase that that listing has been completed. So like a way to organize, like here's my active listings, here's maybe my pending listings, here are my closed listings. Um, and through that, right, to get through those stages, I would assume they would need some way to communicate with these buyers as well. So some sort of communication channel that's likely separate from like your main messenger, but maybe it's just exclusive to your seller profile. So you can organize all those by listings. Um, these seem like some needs that this persona would have to want kind of a solution for in this product, at least on the seller side. And then I'm happy to jump to the buyer side. But I guess, Alex, like, how does that sound? Like, do we feel like we are accounting for needs? Like, are there others that you'd like me to kind of dive deeper into, or things that maybe we haven't thought about?
Yeah, thanks for checking in, Sam. I think you did a really thorough job of identifying user needs. I don't think you really need to go more in depth at that point.
Okay. So would you want me to jump to the buyer persona and start to kind of break down those needs as well? Is that like a good next step?
Sure, I think whatever you think is appropriate, either the buyer persona or discussing the solutions on the seller side. I think either direction makes sense.
Okay, so let's talk. Just I think the buyer's needs will be a little bit simpler, so we can kind of talk about those quickly and then jump into kind of a little bit of the solution, and then also what success looks like and how we'd measure that success. So for the buyer, essentially they're on the flip side of the equation. So they're looking to purchase these things, so they need a way to not necessarily research the pricing, but definitely get an understanding of what's available on the market, and potentially they could reuse that same kind of need or capability of research, so they know that they're getting a competitive price. So I'm sure there could be kind of an interest for these buyers to understand, hey, and I want an easy way to search for what I'm looking for and ensure that I'm also getting a competitive price. Because at the end of the day, that's what I think kind of my assumptions for the buyer would be, is to understand, like, I have this idea of this thing I want to buy, maybe this eclectic piece of furniture, but I want to also make sure that there's not others like it that are maybe much lower or much higher in price. So I feel like I'm getting a good deal out of this platform. Um, and then, of course, like, again, to kind of like on the flip side of communication, like the buyer would also need a way to communicate and kind of prospect interesting listings that they want more information about. And then on the seller side, they can facilitate that back and forth conversation. And that may also kind of pivot the stage that that listing is in. So maybe the listing is, at just listed, but then once there's a lot of interest, it could potentially be, updated to showcase to the buyers that, oh yeah, like they updated this for me, like they know I'm interested, and others potentially could know that as well, and create some sort of, in a way, urgency to close, this transaction. And then finally, a way to not just communicate but also close out on the deal and facilitate likely shipping as well, whether that's like physical or local pickup, like physical shipping or local pickup. So a way to actually fulfill that transaction, so pay for it and also actually get the product that you're purchasing. So those would be kind of examples, I think, of needs the buyer would have in this product. But yeah, how did that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think those seem very logical. You think we should now move on to developing solutions?
Sure. Yeah. So I think solution wise, right? As far as like the system goes, I think the best thing to do is kind of create some sort of MVP to understand that, right, that these needs are being met in a low cost way. And given the scale and emphasis Facebook already has on Marketplace and their existing user base, it'd be a great add on to take advantage of that. And kind of how my mind goes is a simple kind of launch MVP that is potentially a unique segment of Marketplace specifically for antique buy and sell. So this would be a unique category within the Marketplace experience for these folks that are looking for antiques. And kind of how they get there is that they would show interest, right? So this could be even in Marketplace's overall search today. You can kind of search by product. You could also then search by category. And antiques could be, one example of those categories. I assume there could be many more with scale of Facebook. But these individual category pages, antiques being one of them, would kind of provide this unique and personalized experience for those folks that are looking for an antique, whether to buy or sell. As far as the experience, it would likely be very similar to Marketplace today. So I think we can get a lot of kind of in the world of PM, like whatever you can reuse is always great because it's low cost and you can move quicker and kind of validate your assumptions. So like these needs that these customers have, if we're able to essentially generate an MVP based off the existing marketplace, but kind of white label it or frame it, market it in the way that it's unique for antique buyer and sellers, that may be a great starting place. And then I think what would happen next, of course, beyond just driving traffic there, which I think is an easy task given Facebook's scale and advertising, where we could drive, traffic potentially from even like Instagram, right? We could take all of Meta's portfolio products and drive them, like whether they're interacting with an antique related Instagram page and there's an ad on there to check out the antique marketplace and be seamlessly redirected to this new product. But that's all the marketing side. I think what would be important is also like, what does success mean for these personas and how would we measure that? But before I get into that, as far as the solution, does that kind of make sense without getting too much detail? But I think the best concept would be, reuse, reduce, recycle, and launch some sort of low weight MVP, and then measure success with the metrics that I'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of wrap it up and figure out holistically, is this product doing what it's supposed to?
Awesome. So I guess I'll jump us into kind of what success means and how we'd measure it. So I think starting with the seller, so like what success means for the seller persona. For them, it's of course the ease of use to simply list these antiques and close on them, right? So at the end of the day, there's all these features we could add to the system, but really what they're looking for in success is, I want a simple way to sell these things, right? And what we provide will hopefully accomplish that. And I think there will be some metrics that we can kind of consider and track to ensure that we're meeting this overall kind of thematic success goal for this seller. And I guess one other kind of item to consider as well is that ideally the seller wants to get the best value as well, right? So in both cases, I think the buyer and seller, they want this happy harmony of like the most price, but not outrageous where no one will buy it. So it's kind of like maximizing the profit for the seller. So they feel like not only do they have a good experience, close on the transaction quickly, but also got a great value for that transaction. And then I guess, do we want to jump to the buyer, what success means for the buyer, and then create the metrics? Or do we want to talk about the metrics for the seller and just kind of stick on that persona until we finish it out?
Sure. I think the former makes sense. We can just talk about the buyer now.
Okay. So then for the buyer, so they don't care about selling, of course. They're interested in finding the things they want and purchasing them for the best price. So that would be kind of my big assumption of what the buyer's success would look like. It's, a very simple way to search and understand what's available on the market and ensure they're getting and making an informed decision and being able to receive the best price. So kind of, again, on the buyer side, it's a similar metric of best value. It's kind of not to sneak ahead, but both the seller and buyer want to ensure they get the best value out of this platform. Yeah. So I guess, the last step to take us through would probably be, so now that we kind of know what success would be like for the buyer and seller, we'd want to create some metrics to actually track that. So I think kind of also considering the lens of Facebook, so like this product as a whole and like how it will be successful, but also measure these things that our user base wants to be able to succeed in their own needs. Kind of what I usually do in this circumstance is kind of come up with a list of a bunch of different kind of high priority kind of KPIs that we can measure, ranging from like actual impact to like more so like quantitative but also qualitative, so like user feedback, satisfaction, but also like hard metrics like monthly active users. So I think what I'll do is maybe just come up with a set of like 5 or 6, and maybe we can prioritize kind of the top 3, and those can become kind of our key performance indicators, and the others can kind of become the secondary metrics, and of course there'll be even tertiary and beyond that we track across this program. But yeah, so I could maybe start us with there with some examples, kind of if you allow me to work with you to prioritize these. So I'll maybe just create a few and write them down to the things that come to mind for like any healthy product, but also unique for this antique marketplace. So one holistic KPI that kind of always resonates is like monthly active users. So we think of like how many people are actually using this product and how is it growing month over month. With that, and I think with a lot of these metrics, we'd have both sides. So we'd have seller monthly active user and also buyer, because we want to understand how both parties are growing and seeing value. Because similar to any product, like we think of Uber, for example, if there's a lot of people that are driving cars but no one asking for those cars, it's a failure. And vice versa. If there's a lot of people asking for cars but no cars serving them, it's a failure. So there needs to be this healthy balance and growth of both to ensure that there's long-term success. So in this same case, to kind of wrap that analogy back to the antique marketplace, we need to ensure that there's steady growth of sellers making these listings and then buyers in the platform looking for these listings and closing on these listings. So that's monthly active users, and there would likely be a metric again for seller and buyer, and likely both as well, just to show total. And then considering, so that's kind of a general KPI. I think considering a more specific one for this system would likely be, and this is more focused on the seller side, would be something like total listings per month. So how many listings are being generated and listed per month? And are we showing that growth month over month? Because ideally for a healthy product, we want to show more sellers joining the platform and also more listings being listed on the platform to show that healthy success. So that would be more so on the seller side. And this is just listings. So I think kind of one other area would likely be like how many listings are, I mean, we can go into a lot of detail. Like I'll just say 2 quick ones. So like pending listings. So these are like listings that are in the next stage. So they've been listed, but now they're actually almost closed. So there's high interest from a buyer, but maybe it hasn't closed yet. And then the second would be closed listings. So like pending, I'm just writing these down as well, and closed listings. The reason why I was going to not include it, but I think we should include pending listings as well, is from a product health standpoint. That can give you a good indicator of how many listings are getting to the pending stage, but then stopping, right? And not actually converting. So you can see and improve with new features or capabilities or considering user feedback how you can optimize the close rate, which I think is one of our main KPIs, is the actual conversion. So how many listings are there and how many of them are being closed in that same month period and month over month. So we want to show a steady flow of new listings, but also we want to see them being kind of churned, like burned down and converted on, or else you'd have like a Goliath of listings and it would just keep growing, and then we know that the value is not being met because the sellers would get frustrated that they're listing something and it's not being closed on, and that's one of their success criteria. So that's kind of a set. I think also because I talked about like the more subjective qualitative metrics would be, I think with any listing, likely we would, and even across the way, we'd want to collect user feedback and sentiment. So I think, at each stage along the way, if we're able to collect that sentiment, it would help us kind of understand the customer satisfaction. So kind of like CSAT is what we track. So customer satisfaction score. Um, that would allow us to assess things like, hey, would you recommend this to a friend? What's out of 5 stars? Like, how do you like using the service? Maybe in the cases where something's been pending and now it's been pending for X many weeks, maybe a 1 week period and it's still pending. There can be some sort of feedback mechanism to understand like why is this still pending? Like what would help you close on this deal? And maybe there are certain things we're looking for, which could be like, oh, it's price conscious, or maybe the seller backed out, or the seller forgot to update something. These these sentiments can help us kind of create a feedback loop into the product to make it better over time. Because I think as good as these hard metrics are, like monthly active users or close rate, um, satisfaction and actual verbatim feedback from our real users is essential. Um, One other metric that comes to mind that I would say is also a main KPI would be total revenue generated. So like this is also kind of one of the goals of the product is to assess like how much overall is this Facebook product generating in terms of revenue um, for these sellers. And I think from that you can assess kind of the scale and business and start to capitalize on that as well. By charging certain fees for sellers based off of like average sellers are selling X amount per month. If you become a premium seller, we can kind of advertise better your listings, help them close at a faster rate. And we can track all that with our closed listing metric, and also help you kind of have a more premium listing experience. So like there's a lot of ways we can capitalize on that, but without knowing the background data and how much it's driving per seller, but also overall as a platform, it will be difficult to make those types of feature enhancements down the road.
Awesome. I'm assuming you're basically wrapping it up, right?
Yeah, so I think that wraps up at least kind of the first pass at kind of going through the question and understanding like who the personas are, what the mission statement for Facebook is, the unique problems they have, potential MVP solution, and then what success means and how we'd measure that success. And the next step would be, I guess, launching, and yeah, and then experimenting and seeing if we're validating our assumptions here with our success criteria.
Great. Just to analyze Sam's response here. For one, he does a very good job initially of clarifying the prompt. He mentions his assumptions right off the bat. He segregated the users into the two big groups, buyers and sellers, talked about each of their pain points, talked about each of their solutions, and created metrics for each of those users. Cognizant about Facebook's angle the whole time, excuse me, he mentions existing marketplace features and the integration into Instagram, the existing user base's needs, and how to capitalize on that. And then he gives a very lean MVP with clear-cut metrics. I think this is a very great example of how to answer product questions. But before I wrap this up, I wanted to ask if you have advice for students.
I think, yeah, no, thanks, Alex. I really appreciate your kind of recap of the interview, and yeah, thanks for having me again today. It's been a great time. I think with anything, practice hopefully gets you close to perfect. I don't think anyone can be perfect, but I think just practice with these types of questions, considering different angles. Of course, like as you get internships and your first jobs or second jobs in product management, you start to apply these types of things naturally, where they kind of come across a little bit more naturally, and your brain thinks in that way of, at the end of the day, I kind of joked to Alex about this, but the Uber example, if you're building a product and one of the sides is kind of uneven, it will likely fail. So to ensure that doesn't happen, for example, there's a bunch of people that are willing to give rides on Uber, but no one that's interested, maybe due to the price or whatever it is. That's a failure. So you have to measure and understand like in this case, like what are the sellers and buyers looking for, and what does success look like for both of them? Because this product is for both people. It's not just for the sellers. It's not just for the buyers. So yeah, I think considering having empathy towards those users, like putting yourself in their shoes, but then also having the lens of the greater company or organization to understand like what's their unique value add here. How could you capitalize on existing products and services already available to you? Again, like Alex mentioned, yeah, like lean. So like, how can you be efficient about it, right? Everything costs money. So like, if you can understand and drive value via some sort of MVP or lean prototype, maybe in half the time it'll take you to build out the full experience, but actually get real user feedback and sentiment to make it better, in a month versus, 6 months. That's a huge win, right? They say like fail fast. So considering that, like considering how an engineering team would actually want to build this as well, like no one wants to take forever to build something. They want to quickly get informed feedback from their user base and then make it better in this kind of harmony loop of user feedback. So yeah, yeah, practice to recap, like practice hopefully gets you close to perfect.
Yeah, thanks for that advice. I think that's about it for this interview. Thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate your time.
That's a wrap on that interview. In the Product Manual's PM interview preparation course, you will learn all of the expert frameworks for each question type that you need to produce 10 out of 10 responses. Go ahead and go over to theproductmanual.com and get started today.